Welcome back to the Change Your Life podcast. I'm Dwight Gillespie, your host. And if you haven't done so yet, please hit the subscribe button and like this and share it with your friends. As I said, my name is Dwight Gillespie. I've written this book called Price Tags. It's out on April 28th. It'll be available online wherever you buy books, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, so forth. Any book outlet will have it, or it should, hopefully. Anyway, we are doing this podcast. It's called Change Your Life, the Change Your Life podcast. And it is strictly about that, about changing your life and the things that you can do to get out of your own way. And today we're going to be talking about victimhood and to stop being a victim. And I was just talking with the engineer here about what that looks like for me. And the things I like to do, I like to talk about my own life and my own circumstances. I say I would never ask you to do something that I haven't personally done or been through myself. And one of them is to stop being a victim. And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And when I say that to people, I say, look, life doesn't care much about who you are, what you look like, what you sound like. Because let's face it, I'll tell you this: if there's somebody who looks like you, who sounds like you, who walks like you, talks like you, and does those things, and if they're successful, that pretty much means that you can be successful too. So, regardless of your race, your gender, your sexual identity, your nationality, speech impediments, learning disabilities, all of these things. If you can see people who have those things as well and have been successful, then you can be too. And I talk about this now. I grew up in a house where it was easy to play a victim. My father was a compulsive gambler and a drinker. My mother was a drinker. I'm one of 7 kids. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. It was a tough place to be a kid. It really was. And that's about the best I can say it. Today they call it dysfunctional. Back then we called it Irish. And so I grew up in that atmosphere. We all drank. We all used some form of chemical enhancement. I used to say that the alcohol was the family therapist, and every now and again we'd all go to see the therapist at the same time, and we called that the holidays. And it was a great time. And it was a very violent place at times and very confusing. And it was easy to come out a victim. My father committed suicide 2 weeks after I graduated high school. I was 18 years old, scared to death. I had no idea how to navigate this thing called life. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I didn't have the grades to go to college. I didn't know anything. I barely made it through high school, mostly out of laziness rather than aptitude. I didn't like it, so I didn't participate in it very much. I liked working. I taking care of myself for the better part of my life. Even at that point, there wasn't a lot of parental guidance in the house. My older sister, Nancy, she was pretty much the one who took care of us. And she left when she was 17. She went off to school. And we were left on our own. I was 12. And from that point forward, I mean, my parents, their addictions really started taking off. So, there was this whole victim mentality thing that became prevalent in my life. And I had a girlfriend that didn't treat me well, and I didn't treat her well either. And that, of course, as a victim, you don't look at it. I didn't look at my part in that, right? I looked at hers. My first wife, she I'd like to have a lot of sex, and I didn't necessarily have to be in the room for that to happen, as it turned out, and I didn't listen to anybody who warned me about that beforehand. And there were people who tried. And so I got married and divorced, and it was nasty. And I came to back to New York City and met a nice girl, and she really was, and she was a good girl. And we got married, and we had a beautiful child, and we had another one on the way. And then he died, in a horrible car accident. And we lost the baby 6 weeks later. So all of this stuff made me a victim. I was a victim. I was that guy. And I was an addict on top of it all. And I had been all my life. I've been a drug addict. At some points in my life, I was able to curtail it for a little piece of time. The longest time that I'd had was actually when I met my second wife. I had been clean. I hadn't used at that point for a few years. And it was several years after that that I actually relapsed and started using again. And I had an excuse. Well, if you had my life, you'd used to. My mother hated me. Like my mother and I never got along. We never had a good relationship. I didn't care for her much, and the feeling was very mutual. Not that that's right or wrong. It got to a point with my mom. I mean, my mom had 7 kids, and four of us didn't go to her funeral. Four of her kids didn't bother showing up to her funeral, and that kind of shows you what it was all about. And again, I played this role. I was a victim, and I would cry and complain to anybody who would listen. Oh, my kid, my wife. I hated my wife. She hated me. And the kids were dead. And I hate my job. And everything was so hard. Everything was so bad, and nobody understood. And I drowned in this pool of self pity that it was so funny that I thought my world was so bad and everything was so tough. I would have traded lives with anyone, sight unseen. And I meant it too. Like my life was so bad, you had no idea. You couldn't fathom my troubles, right? Like nobody had ever lost kids before. Nobody ever came from a hard upbringing. Nobody ever dealt with drug addiction. Nobody, like I was the only one. I was the victim. And, my son passed away. It was in November, November 2nd. His birthday was November 28th. We lost the baby December 15th. So for years, like starting in October, I would go into that whole point. Oh, poor me. That it would begin right about middle October and it wouldn't end till like mid January. And I wouldn't get off the couch except to, eat shit and get high, like to go get more drugs. It was the only reason I left the house, and I had a good union job that afforded me the ability to do these things. And I was a victim. And if you didn't fall into that, like all I wanted to hear out of your mouth was poor Dwight, poor you, oh, you poor guy. Oh, poor. And anybody who gave me any kind of constructive information, like, get the, I'm trying not to swear too much. I don't want to be banned, you get demonetized for things like that, and rightfully so. Anyway, he said, get off the couch. Like you got it. Go take a shower. Go take a walk around the block. Get some fresh air. Change your thought, move a muscle. I wasn't interested in any of that. And if you started telling me things like that, you were short for my world. Like I didn't even want you in my circle, and that meant cutting a lot of people out. And I find that when I work with people, when I talk to people, because I do work with a lot of people, and that's the first thing they'll say is, what are you doing? You got to get off the couch. And if you give me a million reasons why you can't, then I say, okay, all right. I'm not going to argue with you over it. This is what you choose. Like you have to make that choice after a while, because after a while, grief becomes pity, and I heard it in myself, and this is how I knew I was a victim, because it was, why do these things always happen to me? My father's suicide, my wife's cheating, and all these things. And the fact is that really none of them happened to me. I didn't commit suicide. I didn't die in that car accident like these. And it's okay again to mourn, but when I want to point it all and make it all about me, I've crossed this line from mourning into victimhood. And I do a nice thing on this about the grief process, and it's another podcast that I've done, so I don't want to get into that too much. What I really want to talk about here is that the victim mentality that goes behind that, like that you don't understand. You didn't grow up like I grew up. You didn't grow up in this hard scrabble life. You didn't have the obstacles that I had. Uh, but it's all a lie. And after a while, I have to become responsible for my own decisions, and that's when I am forced to come out of that victimhood mentality. If you really want to change your life, I believe anyway, and it's true for me. And again, I don't ask you to do anything I haven't done myself. Um, for me, in order to change my life, it was to stop looking at it from a victim point of view. It was to stop looking at it as, oh, this is happening to me and poor me and all that other stuff, and to understand that I made these decisions. I made the decision not to listen to anyone when I got married the first time. All the good friends. Hell, I think even she warned me about it, like to heed that advice and understand that the reason I was in that was because I stayed in it, because it was easier to stay in it and force myself upon it than it was to change it, because I was lazy. because I didn't have a job, I didn't have any money, and she had all of that stuff, and it was more about that than it was about her. And surprise, surprise, she cheated. And I don't even blame her for that today, because when I look back on it and I get honest and I lose my victim mentality, I can say that girl was running for her life, and maybe she could have handled it better. But I know I definitely could have handled it better. That I think that her cheating and forcing me to see it was her way of saying, please, will you finally leave now? Because she didn't know how to kick me out and I didn't know how to leave. And and in accepting that and accepting the fact that I was no victim, that in my life I have signed up for every bit of misery that I've had as an adult. I made these decisions. I made the decision to not go back to school. I had a GI Bill. I was in the military. I had GI. They didn't do it. I didn't exercise it. I made the decision to get married. I made the decision to get married the second time to a woman who it turns out, I did a lot of damage to. When I accept that I am not a victim in any of this and that I am accountable for my life, it's at that point that I can finally start saying, okay, how do I make up for this? How do I stop messing this up? How do I take control of my life and move on from here? Because at that point, you've just become an adult. When you finally stop blaming everybody else and you take control, right? And I tell you this, if part of your victimhood, and I'll end it on this, if part of your victimhood is also that other people have to change in order for you to be happy, you'll never be happy. You're not a victim. If you're waiting for your husband or your wife or your girlfriend or boyfriend, or whoever it is, to become a better person or to realize what a wonderful person you are in order to live a better life, then you're going to wait forever. Take your life by the horns, live your life, understand that it's up to you, understand that you are responsible for your actions and your decisions, and you'll lead a better life, I promise you. My name is Dwight. Keep coming back. We're going to have more updates. Again, you can buy the book at any booksellers. You can also get it off the website. My website is dwightgillespieauthor.com, and you can download a lot of neat stuff there. Okay, thank you for listening. My blog is there as well. You may want to check that out. Thank you for everything. Have a wonderful week. My name is Dwight, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.